Hey guys, and welcome back to Can I Has Buff, the Warframe series that puts older weapons under the spotlight in the hopes they get a rework or buff, as well as offering suggestions of my own. In this episode, we take a look at the Glaxion, a Corpus freeze ray unlockable from the Energy Lab in the Clan Dojo that rapidly expends ammo to create a freezing beam of cold damage. The Glaxion was introduced on August 28, 2014 in the Operation Cryotic Front event, which was the introduction to the Excavation game mode. One of the only guns in the game that deals innate cold damage, it becomes easily effective against Grineer alloy armor and Corpus shielding. Although it has low damage in the UI, the damage is actually higher due to how continuous weapons work in Warframe. In reality, it will deal 1 to 3 times the 2.5 cold damage listed at base after 20 rounds of the ammo has been used, as long as the beam constantly touches the enemy during this period. The beam, however, is one of the reasons the Glaxion currently suffers in Warframe. When the Glaxion was first released, and many months after, the beam was more like the Flux rifle with heavy caliber, i.e., the beam stayed straight but wobbled from the center in a fast motion. While mildly inaccurate, it is easily managed at closer ranges. For whatever reason, however, DE decided to ruin the beam of the Glaxion and instead change it to a solid, wavering beam that slowly moves in a very wide radius and often suddenly changing directions. If you remember what I just said about the damage, this means it's very hard to keep the beam on the enemy long enough to take advantage of the full potential of the weapon, which often results in wasting ammo. That being said, if the player is skilled enough to quickly jerk their mouse when the beam changes its angle, the Glaxion can become a fairly decent weapon, with damage ticks well over 1,000 on body shots to enemies without armor. Having average critical chance and its status listing being status per second, it does fall short compared to other weapons, so here are a few of my suggestions to buff the Glaxion. Without changing any of the stats, my first suggestion is a straightforward change to revert the negative changes to the beam, so it becomes more fair and easier to keep the beam locked on enemies for maximum damage. A small change, but one that is, in my opinion, necessary. Similar to the Acrid in how it procs Toxin on every shot regardless of elemental damage, the Glaxion will now actually freeze enemies even if the damage is changed from cold. It's disappointing that a freezing beam can lose its freezing ability by simply adding elemental damage to it, so allowing it to actually slow enemies with every tick of damage would make it very useful and also pretty fun. In addition, enemies who are killed by the cold damage of the weapon will explode, dealing 5% of their health as cold damage in a 5-meter radius as they shatter into icy chunks. This would only occur if the Glaxion dealt the killing blow, and only if the final tick of damage was not another elemental. Similar in a way to my second suggestion, the Glaxion would gain unique effects when firing on enemies who are undergoing certain elemental procs. For example, if the enemy is currently on fire, damaging them with the Glaxion will cause a blast proc to occur, knocking them and nearby enemies down as the cold from the weapon, regardless of mods, combines with the heat. If the enemy is currently under a toxin proc, damaging them will cause a viral proc to occur, halving their health for the normal duration as it combines with cold. And if the enemy is electrified, shooting them with the Glaxion will cause a magnetic proc to occur on that enemy. This would allow the Glaxion to synergize with elemental warframes, or in case of gas damage, allow the Glaxion to boost its own damage in a unique way. It would be situational, of course, but an Ember's Fireball, or World on Fire for example, would allow the player to cause blast procs to occur, and a Frost would allow frozen enemies with Freeze or Ice Wave to suffer viral procs when fired upon. It would be pretty interesting and I assume fairly easy to implement. So those are my suggestions for buffing the Glaxion. If you thought my ideas were good, leave a like or a comment. And as always, Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next episode of Can I Has Buff.